How did Europeans solve the casteism problem in Europe? Or do aristocrats of Europe still retain wealth and power? And our no, Europe had a slavery system, but the descendants of the slaves and peasants don't get any kind of reservation. They just have strict anti-discriminatory laws. In India, we have all kinds of reservation for what we call lower castes, but still we haven't been able to tackle discrimination effectively. And yet, despite not having reservations, Europe has been able to tackle discrimination so effectively. How do they do it? Okay, two kind of related questions. First of all, there is no such thing as caste. Okay, in India we have had jati varna, jati system, the jati varna system, which is a whole different thing from the sociedad del castas that the Portuguese and the Spanish instituted in the Americas. Very different. And the same system exists in Europe. The jati varna system, historically it existed. Jati means the lineages, and this varna means the occupations. The Europeans also had that. I mean, look at the surnames you have among the Anglo-Saxon people, the English-speaking people: Thatcher, Fletcher, Smith, Arrowsmith, Goldsmith, so on, so forth. What is a thatcher? A thatcher is an occupation. It's thatching roofs. The process of thatching, putting roofs on houses and cottages. That's thatching. So a person who did that was called a thatcher, and that's a surname, which means it was a hereditary occupation. What is Fletcher? A person who makes arrows to be used in warfare. It's a Fletcher. Keith Fletcher was India's cricket coach. It's a surname, which means it's a hereditary occupation. Smith is a person who works with metal. That's one of the major surnames in the Anglo-Saxon world. So you had hereditary occupations everywhere in the world, in the Indo-European world, and other parts of the world also. And the same thing existed in India, but we call it casteism. And does the world have discrimination? Of course. There's discrimination everywhere. Some of it is terrible, some of it may be called discernment. We'll not go into the discernment part of that. But what the Europeans did is, in Europe, what happened is that they have anti-discrimination laws and so on. So you're not allowed to discriminate against a person based on things like their lineage, their heritage, and all that. And that is kind of and those laws are properly implemented. So that has solved any problem of discrimination. No one cares. Today, no one cares about the old occupations anymore. The other question is, do aristocrats of Europe still retain wealth and power? Some of them do. Look, the old nobility of France, it is a small minority segment of the population, but they still are, some of them are still wealthy, and some of them are still powerful. And they still are a powerful lobby in French politics, even though they may not be so visible. When it comes to the British nobility, they still have wealth and power. The British royal family still is extraordinarily wealthy. And the lesser nobility also has estates and all that. And they're able to profit from that. And you still have monarchies in many European nations, right? So there is that. In India, we have done away with that, really, genuinely done away with that. Perhaps to our detriment, perhaps not. Only time will tell us. You had slavery in Europe, of course. I mean, during the time of William the Conqueror, 1066 AD, at least 10% of the population of Britain was slaves. They used to wear copper collars, which were never taken off. You will find skeletons with copper collars around their necks even now. The copper collars were not removed even in death. So you had that, and you had the peasants who were almost like slaves. They had no land. They used to work on other people's land, and they used to live hand to mouth. So you had a very feudal system in Europe, with the majority of the population being very poor. But yeah, after the Industrial Revolution, a lot changed. So in India, we never had slavery. We had the Jati Varna system. Today, we are told that it was a very oppressive system, which is a lie. And we have reservations based on the not on the Jati Varna system, but the four caste system that the British imposed on India. which has actually created a caste system which we never had. And it has not solved any of India's problems. Now people want more and more reservations. Soon they will want reservations in private sectors, and if that happens, I think it's best to leave India, because then India will never have merit, and the nation will never progress. So I hope it doesn't happen. Uh, so the simple solution is that a nation has to respect merit, and that's what happened in Europe, right? By abolishing all discrimination and making everything based on merit, the entire problem, which may or may not have existed, was done away with. And in India also we can do away with it. This discrimination thing. How do you deal with discrimination if it exists in India? First thing, in all government certificates, remove the word caste. If caste is not is to be abolished, as people say, then why do we put caste on the certificates? No government certificate, no academic mark sheet or certificate should have the word caste. Destroy caste, right? I completely fully support destroying caste. Remove the word caste from all certificates, government certificates, educational certificates, medical certificates, everything. Annihilate caste completely. Second, make everything merit based, whether it is admissions to schools, colleges, universities, whatever, whether it is jobs, make everything merit based. Third, give reservations based on financial status to those who are below poverty line or whatever. Come up with a very simple criterion for those who need reservations. And what kind of reservations are to be given? Free education. That's the kind of reservation that should be given. And then once you have completed your free education, you should be able to compete only on merit. That's it. So if you do these simple things, in 20, 30 years, you can solve all the problems in India. But then politicians won't get votes, right? Their votes are all based on caste calculus and God knows what else, what other nonsense. That's what keeps India divided. And politicians benefit from the system, so they don't want to end the system. That's the problem. That is the problem. The problem is the politicians. They benefit from this. They benefit from the division that the divisions that these foreigners have created in India. So they will keep on exacerbating these divisions and seeking rent from these divisions as a consequence of these divisions. They will never address the problem. That's the problem in India. And that's why India is not able to address any of these long-standing issues of the past 200, 300 years. So I hope that explains what the problem is.